Whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey guys, how are you? What's happening? All right, can we just start with the fact that the next 8-week parenting pivot starts in a week? What in the world is happening? I can't believe it's here. I'm so excited it's happening. Last week, we did the most amazing 5-day boot camp. It was free. It was called Get Your Kids to Want to Listen Boot Camp. If you didn't sign up for it, if you missed it, you can still get the replays. You just have to go to cmp.works/bootcamp. If you're listening to this when it releases or right around when it releases, the link should still be in the show notes. And those replays, you can have access to them this week. They're going to come down on the 5th, which is the same day that we are closing applications for the next round of the Parenting Pivot. And if you haven't heard what the Parenting Pivot is, it's this 8-week parenting boot camp. Moms who've gone through the pivot have reported a 251% improvement with their kids listening, without threats, without bribes, without consequences. A 246 improvement in their ability to handle challenging situations in a calm, connected way. Those are real numbers based on what they're reporting. And all of this is as a result of participating in the Parenting Pivot. It's implementation centered, not for the faint of heart, but for those who are really ready to make a shift with their parenting, to go from corrective to connective. It's all of this stuff we talk about on this podcast. It's getting help implementing it. That's the hang up for most of us. It's maybe a little bit of knowledge, but mostly translating knowledge into real time with the kids when they're having their off-track behavior, when our nervous system is getting activated. So I love the pivot. And this is the last pivot that will be part of the CMP study. We have spent the entire year, we began in February with our first pivot of the year, and we have used all of the pivots to measure the impact of Connect Method Parenting by doing a study. So this will be the last pivot that's part of that study. And the cool thing about that is that if you participate in the pivot and participate in the study, which you can choose if you don't want to do the study, totally fine. But if you participate in the study, then you pay a $200 refundable deposit. That's just to ensure participation. We've got to make sure that we measure people who go through, who they actually complete the 8 weeks. They do the work so that we can see the impact. Because if you come in and you do half the work or you do 2 weeks and then you stop, that doesn't give us, any results that we can use. So you pay the $200 deposit. If you participate in the program and complete it, and all of this is really clearly laid out, or you pay the deposit, then you can get the deposit back after the 8 weeks. It's fantastic. So applications close on October 5th. I'll put the link in the show notes. It's cmp.works/pivot. You can also just go to connectmethodparenting.com and find all of the information about this current October pivot right there on the website. This will be the last pivot we do this year. The next one will not start until January. We're going to enjoy December with our families. We're going to not do a brand new one starting in December. We're going to start a new one in January. So if you want to set yourself up for success for this holiday season, as Thanksgiving, if you're in the States, is coming around, Christmas, New Year's, vacations for the kids off school, if you want to set yourself up to be the most prepared you possibly can be to show up as a connected parent, you're going to want to join the pivot. And I also want to thank all the amazing moms who attended the boot camp last week. I just mentioned that, the 5-day Get Your Kids to Want to Listen boot camp. It was so fun. It was so amazing. Someone reached out to me after and said that they weren't going to sign up to continue on to do the pivot after the boot camp. They were just coming for the boot camp, which is totally fine. But she reached out and she said, gosh, this helped me so much. In 5 days, my mind was blown. My parenting has begun to shift. I feel like I should have paid you for the boot camp. It was so good. And so she was so cute. She said, anything I learn or do in the pivot is just a bonus because I have already got my money's worth from the boot camp, which is so fantastic. So at the very least, go request access to the boot camp. You'll get it for the rest of the week, the replays. Then they're coming down on the 5th and the next pivot starts on the 7th. So fun. So love all of you guys that participated in the boot camp. I miss you. I miss interacting with you. There was a lot of current league members that came, and I'm so glad you guys all came because you are familiar with this content, and the repetition allows you to take what I'm saying, pick up on nuanced things and additional things that you wouldn't have gotten on your first pass and take it to the next level. So love that I had so many people that are in League, either have done a pivot or in Mastery come, and so many people that came and are going to join us for this next pivot, which is the first program in League. I use the word League as the name for the umbrella program. Everybody who comes to League has to go through the pivot first. And then if they want to continue, they move on to CMP Mastery. So I just love having you all come to the boot camp. It was so fun. I loved having everybody there. And if you want to join this last round of the pivot, you want to join something that genuinely will change your parenting forever, jump in. We have so many cool things we're offering as part of the pivot. So go to the website. You can read all about it at cmp.works/pivot. You can apply. You do have to apply. We review just to make sure it's a good fit. You can get all the information there. You can apply. You can see everything we have up our sleeves. Then see if you can get in for this next round that starts on the 7th. My goal is every time we do a new pivot or I offer anything where I'm teaching and helping moms implement Connect Method parenting, that I make it better than the time before. And so what we do as a small but mighty team is after each pivot, I talk with the people who have been involved, who have helped me, and we gush first about how amazing it was and how incredible you all were that came and showed up and participated and how much we loved it. And then we ask ourselves questions like, how could we make this even better? And we're always trying to improve and improve and improve and iterate. And that makes it super fun for me because I'm always thinking and asking myself the question, how can I blow people's minds even more? What could we give them? What could we teach them? What could we encourage them or challenge them to do that would make this even more impactful for their life? And that's how we get better and better, and how every single pivot is an improvement on the last one. I mean, every pivot has been awesome, but every pivot gets upgraded a little bit. So we finished our last pivot a few weeks ago, and we've been prepping for this one ever since. And I can't wait for those who are going to go through it again, who are coming in for the first time. I even had a couple people who have been with me in Mastery that want to go back through the pivot just to go through it with a different focus. One of the moms said to me, I did it with one child in mind last time. Now I'm going to go through it with a different child in mind. So, people are dipping in and out of the pivot, and I can't wait to see you all. All right. So did you notice what number today's episode was? It was 83. Now, that might mean nothing to you. And in and of itself, 83 means really nothing other than, holy cow, we're already at 83. But what really is significant about this is our next episode that's going to go live on October 3rd is going to be our 1-year anniversary episode. That will be episode 84. And I can't believe, it blows my mind. It's so crazy that we have been on here talking together for a solid year. I have loved being with you all here. I'm so proud of myself. I want to say yes, go girl. I'm giving myself high fives, which my kids always laugh when I do that. But I'm so proud of the work that I've done on this podcast and the people that I've met through this podcast and the lives that have been changed because you guys are showing up, you're listening, and you're applying this material. Some of you are doing it on your own. Some of you are doing it with me in League. I am amazed by all of you. I'm so thrilled that Connect Method Parenting is getting out into the world. Thank you for being part of this journey. I truly am honored. So I'm looking forward to the next episode and hitting that 1-year mark in just a few days. Okay, so let's talk about this episode though. We're going to talk about acceptance. And if you have been working with me in League, you're probably rolling your eyes because you hear me say this word, accept so much, because it's one of the keys to getting our nervous system to calm down, to go back into parasympathetic. But I'm going to do a slightly different spin on acceptance today. And we're going to talk about how accepting requires effort. So I teach this inside of League all of the time. Sometimes I use the word accept. Sometimes we're going at it in a different way. But, really the bottom line is to accept, to stop resisting, to find peace, neutrality, to make sense of it. And we're helping our nervous systems navigate what have been very tricky situations where we've gotten really activated, where we've been resistant, and looking for the path that will allow our nervous system to calm down. So I'm helping moms learn and implement this in my Connect Method Parenting group League 24/7. It's my happy place. I love office hours because that's where we do so much of the live interactive work of taking these principles like acceptance and then figuring how to embody that in our nervous system with a specific situation. That's where it gets tricky for our brains. We might conceptually and cognitively get it and have no resistance to the concept of acceptance. But then when our child throws a fit for the 100th time, or our teenager starts using swear words or breaks curfew, our brain might freak out and not be able to translate the knowledge that we have into real life. So if you want more information, like I said, I'm just going to drop it one more time. So if you want more information about how to take this from knowing to doing, how to get Connect Method parenting happening in real time, go to connectmethodparenting.com and you'll see when we're doing the next pivot. That's the best way to come in and start getting help. If you're listening to this live, you still can apply. We're starting, I think it'll be a week from when this episode airs, but Monday, the 7th of October. But applications have to be in by the 5th because we do have an application process. We review it. So we need a couple days to do that. So we'll kick off on the 7th. That will be our orientation week, and the meat of it will happen the following week. But if you're listening to this later, just go to connectmethodparenting.com and you'll see on there the button for the waitlist. You can get yourself on the waitlist and get pre-approved to reserve your spot for the next time we open the pivot, which won't be until after this one, won't be till 2025, January, I'm thinking. I don't have a specific date, but it won't be till next year, which is crazy. I cannot believe 2025 is around the corner, but it is, and it's going to be here before we know it. So I was teaching this concept inside of League, and the mom I was working with paused after we'd gone through her scenario and said to me, okay, I'm going to have to put some work and some effort into accepting that this is okay. And it stopped me cold. It really got my attention. And I thought, wow, there's so much truth in that statement. Accepting does require effort. I think a lot of times when we think about acceptance, it feels like giving up. And the reality is acceptance requires a tremendous amount of effort if you're doing it right. One of my favorite quotes from Eckhart Tolle is one where he says, "Whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it." I'm going to say that again. It's so good. Whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Now, how does that feel when I say that? Do you think that would require effort or no effort? I think it depends on what present moment we're dealing with. Some present moments don't require a lot of effort to accept it. For example, yesterday I was walking down the street with my daughter. It was picturesque. The weather was perfect. We were having the most lovely conversation. She came and grabbed my hand, felt so connected. It didn't take a lot of effort to accept that moment exactly as it was. I didn't need to change a thing. But there's other moments where I'm feeling frustrated about maybe dishes being left on the counter or clothes being scattered around the bedroom. This was really triggery for me in the past. I've gotten pretty darn good at it now, but situations that have required a lot of effort for me to get to a place of acceptance. So I think when we have moments that aren't turning out the way our brain thinks they should, to accept that moment as if I had chosen it, or think about it for you. Think of the last challenging moment that you had with your children, throwing a temper tantrum, them not going to sleep, refusing to do chores, not wanting to do homework, giving you the side eye, rolling their eyes, breaking curfew. What is it for you? And in that present moment, how much effort would it have taken to accept it as if you had chosen it? Now, we could also apply this concept to your past to change it up a little bit. So what if we said it like this? Whatever your past contains, accept your past as if you had chosen it. Specifically, the effort is going to be required to accept the past moments that our brain thinks should have gone differently or shouldn't have happened. And then we can turn to the future and say, how do we prepare ourselves? What kind of effort would it require of me to prepare myself so that whatever my future contained, I accepted it as if I had chosen it? That would take some effort. My brain loves to catastrophize. If I give it a little bit of leeway, it's going to run all the way to the end of some terrible scenario. And I I watch it and it doesn't affect me like it used to, but that has required a lot of effort to allow myself to notice the catastrophizing thought, not fall into it, accept that even the catastrophizing thought as if I had chosen it, and then say, thank you, nervous system, for trying to protect me from some perceived future that most likely will never happen. And then that acceptance allows that catastrophizing thought to dissipate. Now, when you look at the definition of acceptance, it says the action of consenting. And I love this idea of being in every moment with our emotions, with our kids' behavior, with our own activated nervous system, everything that's happening to us, that's happening for us, that's happening with us, and saying, I consent to whatever it is. I consent. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, what if you're being abused physically, emotionally, sexually, like something really tragic like that, something really extreme? And what I want to say is just stay with me. Most of us are not having those extreme issues. And if you are, then that's a different topic. But what I want to talk about today on the podcast is the stuff that we're regularly dealing with, like our kids not putting away their laundry or fighting or throwing a big tantrum. That's what I want to talk about. And if everything within your regular day, you could say, I consent to my kids being upset, meaning it's okay that my child is throwing a fit right now. I consent to my teenager having a bad attitude, meaning I've normalized and neutralized that experience so that I'm not getting triggered. I'm not going to resist it. Like if you could genuinely drop the resistance and consent and allow and believe that these things that are triggering you are okay, as if you had chosen it, what would your life look like? Would your life be so much better if you agreed and accepted everything that happened in your life? Now, this might feel really challenging, but I want you to explore it. What if you could look at the state of your house, at the behavior of your kids, at your body, at your bank account, at your job, at the judgmental thoughts that you have, at the judgmental comments that you overheard your friends say about you? I want you to think about all of those things that initially your nervous system wants to resist a little bit, and think about what if you accepted them? How would that feel? That would really set you free if you were able to accept them. Now, here's the question. Are you willing to put the effort into accepting them? So let's start with the past. How much effort would it take to accept that the past is as it was and not to try to change it? And let's take it up a notch. How much effort would it take to consent to it, to feel as though you had chosen it? I love that quote because it's so challenging when he says, whatever the present moment contains, and we're going to include the past moments, the catastrophizing thoughts your brain wants to have about future moments, whatever the moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Okay? So we're noticing right now what my brain is doing when I think about the behavior my child had 2 weeks ago. And I'm by default saying, that was not okay. That was rude. That was showing me how ungrateful they were. And what if I could go back to that moment and say, I chose to be in this moment with my child. I choose it. I don't resist it. I'm here. How does that change everything for us? For me, when I think about that, and I want to be clear before I go there, let me backtrack a little bit. What I want to say is by me consenting or accepting it or choosing it, using multiple ways to say this, when I get into that place, I'm not condoning, I'm not encouraging, I'm not enabling. I'm simply saying, this is what's happening. And I'm choosing to be here without resistance because that allows me to show up with a calm, regulated nervous system and navigate what could be a tricky situation in a way I deeply respect. So think about how much effort it would take to accept the past as it was, to not try to change it, to consent to it, and then to possibly let go of any resistance you have to it. And if your brain is saying, oh my gosh, but if I don't fight against or resist or have judgment or get frustrated about this behavior, about the kids not sleeping, about my teenager's bad attitude, whatever it is, then it's not going to change. And here's the truth. Resisting it isn't going to change it because when we resist, our nervous system is activated. Our prefrontal cortex isn't working very well. We can't access the higher thinking that we have. The more compassionate and empathetic ways of being go offline. We're just in fight or flight, which doesn't create a better result. It doesn't allow us to love how we showed up. So I'm offering this idea of freedom and also a path that will lead us to more respect for who we're being as a parent. So to not argue with the past, to not think it should have been different, to not think it should have been better, to not negotiate with it. I want to see if we could, by showing up this way, have created a better outcome for ourselves, to accept it, to consent to it. I mean, it would take some effort, but it would be worth it. How would you feel if you could genuinely believe that everything in your past you consented to? How would that change everything? When you can accept your reality, both your past, your present, and the potentials that your brain's offering for the future without resistance, you're going to live a very different life than when you try to argue against it. Another thing I want you to consider is this: accepting other adults and their behavior. What if you could always accept other adults' behavior? Because here's the thing. A lot of you are saying right now in your heads, well, I'm not going to consent to what other people do, but I want to say, what has not accepting gotten you? Nothing. Have you been able to control their behavior? Nope. Now, when you accept someone's behavior, once again, it doesn't mean you condone it. It doesn't mean you're applauding it. It doesn't mean you're enabling them or letting them get away with bad behavior, so to speak. It doesn't mean that you're saying, hey, will you keep doing this? But if you accepted that, let's use the kids. If you accepted that the kids are going to behave how they want to behave, now you can create an environment where your kids can thrive. You can love them. You can connect with them regardless of what they're doing. You can give them space to feel their emotions. You can offer them this big, generous invitation to exist in your presence. Ultimately, your kids are going to behave however they want. They're not a little puppet. We don't get to dictate what they do. They show us this very clearly when they refuse to eat certain baby foods. I know mine were very clear that peas were not something they wanted and would spit those out and send me the message of, hey, I'm going to eat what I want to eat. So realizing that and dropping into that truth of, hey, I could try to resist it. I could try to control. I might have some success at controlling them, but ultimately, I don't really have that power. It's not really within my scope. I'm not going to encourage it by accepting it. That's not what acceptance means. Acceptance doesn't mean enabling, doesn't mean condoning. It just means accepting that this is the moment that is happening right now, which enables my nervous system to stay calm. So I navigate it so much better as a parent. We lose nothing by accepting, we gain everything. And then back to the adults, like I started a few minutes ago talking about, if we accepted that adults get to behave however they want, and it's different with adults because with kids, we have stewardship, we have responsibility. As a parent, we want to teach and create an environment. So it's slightly different. But with adults, they get to be whoever they want to be. Adults get to do whatever they want to do. And unless they ask for it, they don't need to do anything that you tell them to do. They can do it without your consent, without your input. And what if you genuinely accepted that? I think that would be an amazingly powerful thing to do and amazingly beneficial in your life to be able to consent to things that you have no control over. And ultimately, that's what we're doing today. That's what we're talking about. I'm asking you to consider accepting all of the facts of your life, the situations in your life that you don't have any stewardship or ability to change, to consent to those things, to consent to other people's behavior in the past, to be more present and accepting of things that are happening right now in your present, to be aware of the things in your life that you can't immediately change, like your kid's behavior or the number on the scale when you look at it. That's not something you can immediately change. Or the weather, that's another good one. Or your bank account. A lot of times we'd like to change that, but it's not something we can immediately change. It takes time. So are we willing to put in the effort to accept those things that we truly can't change? Can you accept that everything you have in your life is because in some part you created it? Can you accept that the reason why you haven't developed, let's say, more patience is because you have been unwilling to consent to being more patient, to believing in that for yourself? Now that might make your mind freak out a bit. We're going to dive into it because it certainly made my mind freak out a little bit. I did not want to believe that I was not being more patient because I was lacking acceptance. But as I untangled this for myself, that became very evident that that was contributing to my lack of patience. One of the things that has come up for me recently that's connected to this idea of acceptance is the capacity to have. And I was talking with a friend. We both had hit some major goals that we'd had for a long time. And we were both feeling terrible. Lots of stress and worry and anxiety, alarm, frustration, just so many emotions that didn't feel consistent with how we thought it would feel when we hit these big goals. And as we were talking about it together, we realized that our capacity to have the joy, the fulfillment, the abundance was growing, and it was uncomfortable. We don't often think about it like this. It feels a little bit upside down, but having more money, more joy, more love requires an ability for us to have that in our life. The capacity to have it needs to be there, or it needs to grow so that we can hold it. And I feel like I'm on the other side of this particular experience with that. That was probably 3 months ago I started feeling this, and it threw me off. I was so confused by it. Probably actually started 6 months ago. But now that I've been aware and accepted and increased my capacity to have, I feel so much better. So learning to accept and consent to what you have in the past, and consent and accept everything that you have in the present, might feel uncomfortable. And it requires the capacity to have all of the positive and all of the negative. And both require skills, growth. I don't know how to describe it. It's really fascinating. So let me give you a parenting example. Can you accept or consent to being a patient, connected parent in your future? Can you accept and consent to that? Now, I'm sure you're listening to this and saying, of course, that's exactly what I want to be. I want to be patient. I want to be loving. I want to be accepting. No problem. But the ability to have an increased capacity to be patient, to be loving, to not judge, requires effort to get there. It requires your effort to believe. It requires your effort to let go of all the constraining and contrasting thoughts that you have about it. You're going to have to give up your story that you aren't connected. You're going to have to let go of every belief that causes you to judge or resist your child when they do all those things that trigger you. All the times they've done that in the past, all the times they'll do it in the future, you'll have to totally deconstruct and then reconstruct your belief around how your children should behave. And the deconstruction and the reconstruction will demand of you a capacity to have bigger emotions, both positive and what we call negative. You'll have to create a new way of being when your brain wants to jump to resistance and frustration. You're going to have to hold that resistance or frustration without letting it drive. You're also going to have to hold the ability to love more deeply and profoundly than you ever have, which sounds like that would be easy, but it does require effort to develop that ability. And it's so interesting that this just happened with my good friend, Rebecca, and I. We were just talking about it because we were both a little bit thrown off that we were so uncomfortable having so much goodness. And part of it, I think, was the death of some stories we had about ourselves. They had to die, and it was very uncomfortable. My stories, I had to let go of some stories I didn't even know were there. I was resisting being the person who could create this reality for myself. And I felt guilty. I felt judgmental. I was very resistant. I'm like, I don't deserve this. This shouldn't be happening. Why are we doing this? This is so indulgent. And that was very illuminating. And when you are changing your story, that will be required to have more patience with your kids, that will be required to be more loving with your kids, that will be required to have the belief that my kids are doing the best they can in this moment, period. And if they're doing terrible, it's because their nervous system or some subconscious story or a trigger. Something is keeping them from tapping into their full potential. In order for you to fully embody that, another belief that's trying to stop you from believing that will have to die. And I did that work and I felt that years ago. But this is a process that continues to recycle as we up-level more and more areas of our life. It also is a cycle that will repeat as your kids are getting older and changing. I've had to go through it as my kids are becoming adults. And, I still have some teenagers at home, but each stage requires a new level of ability or capacity to hold something new. So let's circle back to what I was saying about showing up as a more patient, connected parent, because you all are raising your hand saying, yep, pick me. I want to be that person. Here's the truth. If you are able to accept everything that's happened, that's prevented you from being patient and connected, then you will get better at accepting. You will get better at being patient. You will be better at feeling connected. You'll start to accept the things that you can't yet believe. You have to drop old stories. Parts of you will have to go by the wayside. And that is really where I find the most powerful use of the skill of accepting. It's not arguing with anything that's ever happened and not arguing with the possibility and the potential of what's in our future. So when you hear people talk about accepting, I want you to really question what that means for you in your mind. Does that mean giving up? Or does it really require effort? Does it require that you go to work? It's easier to accept, much easier to accept everything that's unconscious within us because they've always been there, or most of our life have been there. We accept them without really a deliberate choice. But what I'm talking about here is identifying things that we want to accept that we've been fighting against, that we don't unconsciously just accept. And most likely we've been arguing against them. So if we look to the past, we've argued against or not accepted, fought against, resisted, you could use whatever word you want, against maybe our child not going to sleep the way we think they should, or not obeying the way we think they should, or not turning their homework in the way we think they should, or eating the way we think they should. And so we've argued against those things. What I want to ask you is, what will it take for you to accept that the past happened and there's no use fighting against it? I've said to myself before that if something happens and there wasn't some intervention that prevented it from happening, I'm going to trust that that is the way it was supposed to happen. I'm not talking about predestination. I'm talking about the fact that the clock has ticked and that event happened and I can't change it. So I'm just going to trust that if it was supposed to change, something would have interrupted it. So the fact that it happened, I'm going to allow myself to accept that it happened. Does that make sense? Just accept that it happened. This is not a moralistic statement. This is not a predestination statement. This is just when something has happened and I literally have no control to be able to go back and change events, I'm in a better place moving forward if I allow the fact that it happened to happen without resistance. So if I am reflecting back on the way I interacted with my child last night and I don't agree with how I showed up, I don't respect the person I was being, I don't like how I showed up, if I can look at it and say, all right, that's what happened. And I was doing the best I could. And I don't like that the best I could do was pretty low on the scale last night. Let me understand what happened. Or my child was really struggling last night and that's what happened. And that's it. That's the best we could do. That's the best he could have done. So how can I show up as I reflect back on that moment? How can I show up for myself and my child in a way that allows me to learn from that event so that I can do better or he can do better in the future? So what will it take for you to accept that the past is the past and there is no benefit to resisting it? The present is only here to teach you what you need to know, and the future is something you are creating. Still up in the air. Even if your brain has a catastrophizing thought and is pretty sure that's what's happening, it's not. Most of our catastrophizing thoughts, 99.9% of them never happen. It might even be less than that. All you have to do is claim the acceptance of the moment. Anything you have the power to imagine, you have the power to create in your life. And the minute you genuinely, truly accept that the past is in the past, and I'm going to believe everyone was doing the best they could, and I'm going to learn and grow from it, then I can make something new in the future. I'm not tied emotionally to the past. I'm not reliving the past through the thoughts I'm having, through the emotions I'm feeling. I promise you that putting effort into accepting and consenting is going to help you create the life you want. All right, you guys, that's what I have for you today. I love you all so much. I can't wait to talk to you in the next episode, number 84, where we're going to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the Connect Method Parenting podcast. I can't believe the first episode went live October 3rd, 2023, and we're already 1 year into it. So insane. Thank you for listening to the podcast. It's an honor to show up here every week and connect with you all, and to have like-minded parents here wanting to take their life to a deeper level, wanting to have more awareness, more consciousness, wanting to show up as the most connected parent they possibly can be, with the regulated nervous system that will allow them to set their children up for success. It's so fun to have these conversations with you. If you're interested in taking this work to the next level, highly encourage you to go to cmp.works/pivot. You can join me for this last pivot of the year. We're starting October 7th. It's 8 weeks. It's a deep dive. It's fantastic. We're going to get your kids to want to listen to you. Keyword want. It's very different than get them to listen to you with bribes or rewards or punishments or timeouts, lectures, none of that. We don't need any of that. We just need connection. You'll also get better relationships. You'll feel more confident. Listening will go up, all of this stuff. So applications close on the 5th, and it will take all of this information that we talk about in the podcast to a deeper level where you'll really be able to feel and experience how all of these concepts can start showing up in your parenting and in your life. It's insane, the changes that start to happen once we get this. It's one thing to learn this all intellectually. It's a totally different thing to truly apply Connect Method Parenting to your life. So I'll see you there, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, you're going to want to check out the 8-week parenting pivot, which is the first phase of my program, the League of Extraordinarily Connected Parents. We're opening up a new round in October. So if you're listening to this live, it's going to be October 7th. If you're listening to this and that date has passed, go check out the website, connectmethodparenting.com, and we'll list the next time we're opening. But if you're listening to this live, go check it out, because you can already apply and get accepted into the next round so that you can lock yourself in place to have a huge shift with your kids, to get them to want to listen to you, which is very different than using punishments, rewards, timeouts, ultimatums to get them to listen to you. We want it to be more cooperative. We want better listening. We want a great relationship, and we want to have a ton of fun when we're parenting. So if that's what you want, if what I talked about in this episode resonated, jump over to cmp.works/pivot. I'll put the link in the show notes as well, and find out more about the pivot, apply to join, and we'll let you know if you get in. All right. Until next time, go connect with your kids, have a blast, and pop back in for another episode soon about how to use connection, not correction, to get your kids to want to listen to you. See you later. Bye.